NASCAR's 2022 season is right around the corner, and it's starting off, like usual, with the Clash. Except the Clash is going to be completely different this year. Instead of being at the high banks of Daytona, whether it be super speedway or road course, it will instead be at a short track made out of the Los Angeles Memorial Coliseum. Yeah, that's pretty nuts. And a lot of fans who might have taken some time off or aren't as much of an avid fan as myself or other diehards are probably going to ask, why? Why was the LA Clash made a thing? And that's what I want to go into today. And I think there's two major categories for it. The first is the Clash's history and the fact that it just kind of died over time. And second is the LA market. So we're going to go into those and kind of just look in depth a little bit, as well as just overview in general why the Clash is moving. Now, as I said before, the Clash was always run at the Daytona International Speedway, whether it was before or during the restrictor plate era. And at first, it was just sort of a race for pole sitters that the year before could race in, a short little dash right before the Daytona 500. And over time, it kind of grew. It stayed as pole sitters for a while, but then it added former winners, among other things, but it was always a race that was run during the day at Daytona. Well, in the early 2000s, that changed a little bit. They started running it at night, and at that time, it was renamed to the Budweiser Shootout. Now, this is something that became a constant for NASCAR for about the next 10 to 15 years. But it's those really 8 or 9 after it went to nighttime where the general view of the Clash, the way it is viewed today, was born. It was the little preseason thunder before the 500. A week before the 500 on a Saturday night, all of the pole sitters, former winners of the event, and whatever little nuances and different drivers here and there that NASCAR wanted to add in, all raced on the high banks for a short, sometimes 70, 80, whatever lap race. And in general, it was really good. There were a lot of great moments, there were a lot of great finishes, and in general, it gave you a preview of what the Daytona 500 would look like, especially if the 500 ended at night. A lot of times you'd see favorites win, but other times you'd see guys who were more of an underdog status win. Well, as the shootout kept going, it got more respected and more exciting. And at one point, it was actually more viewed than the NFL's Pro Bowl, which I know that game doesn't really mean much, but it's still a heavily viewed event, and the shootout was beating it every year. Well, into the COT era, there was a bit of a shift. It was getting crazier. There were starting to be more crashes. The two-car tandem showed up for a little bit in there to kind of spice things up, but it really didn't add as much as just the overall desperation to get the win. Suddenly, instead of having 1 or 2 crashes per race and just a few guys going out because of engine issues or mechanical issues, suddenly there was a big one a race. And then there were a couple big ones. And that kind of continued into the Gen 6 era. Over time, this watered down the action of the Clash when they weren't just running single file around the high side training it so that they didn't crash. Well, this all came to a peak throughout this era until you got to 2020. The 2020 running of the Clash was an absolute embarrassment for both NASCAR, the Cup Series in general, and probably NASCAR fans. It was everything that NASCAR is stereotyped to be when it comes to racing. Just a bunch of guys turning left and crashing all day. And NASCAR had to respond to this. It was atrocious. The winning car looked like they had just went through a meat grinder at the Bristol Motor Speedway. It was awful. So, in 2021, they chose to change it. And instead of running on a Saturday night or Sunday afternoon the week before the Daytona 500, it was run during Speed Weeks, which was now turned to Speed Week. The Daytona Road Course Clash would be run on a Tuesday night now, right before the Daytona 500. It had a great finish. I will give it that. The finish to this race was one that was super exciting. I know in the stands I was going nuts for it, and I know a lot of people at home were. Here's the problem, though. While a lot of people did like the road course being used for the Clash, I can tell you in person, it was incredibly boring to watch. You could barely see any of the action. We were lucky enough where we sat where we could actually see the last lap move, and it was bad for people at home as well, as the ratings were noticeably down. It was a Tuesday night versus a Sunday afternoon. NASCAR is not going to beat itself in ratings with those circumstances. So then we move on to this year, and they announced that they're going to be doing the race at the Los Angeles Coliseum. And this isn't something that is completely out there. A lot of fans have been asking for the Clash to be moved, maybe to a quarter-mile race on the backstretch at Daytona, or to the quarter-mile Bowman Gray Stadium. Stadium racing is nothing new to NASCAR or American racing in general. But the LA Coliseum was one that got a lot of people scratching their heads. Why are they going to the LA market? Because I think that's the second big reason. And I think there's a few reasons to add to this as to why they're going. Number one is the estimates they have right now. As of recording this, it is estimated that 70 or more % of people who have tickets to go to this race are saying that this is the first NASCAR race they will ever be attending. And that doesn't mean that they're drawing in a bunch of new fans as much as it means that maybe some of the fans that have lived in the Los Angeles area now finally have a race to go to. Even though I have said that little caveat, I do think they are going to be bringing in more fans. It's an area that NASCAR really hasn't reached out to, and if you looked at social media, people are talking about it outside of the sport. Now, the other thing about it with the LA market is that it's in the city itself. A lot of times, NASCAR will market itself as going to Hollywood when they go to Sonoma or Auto Club because they're in California. But in reality, they're 40 to 50 minutes away from any major city that they claim to be in. Well, when you're actually in the city, it brings a lot more credence to these ads, and it gives a backdrop showing something similar to what an NFL team would get or an MLB team would get. It kind of brings NASCAR in a way up to where the rest of the major sports leagues are. Speaking of the city, it's a new market altogether for NASCAR. Yes, NASCAR has been in California. Yes, they have raced at multiple tracks through their history out there. They have raced in cities, but they have never raced in Los Angeles. So, if they are able to bring in a lot of fans and maybe keep some of them, this would be a huge boom because it'll show NASCAR that they can move to different cities and maybe get the same results. And then, of course, the last one is it adds variety. Like I was saying before, the Clash had grown stale, whether it was with a road course or a super speedway. NASCAR needed to change things up, both for this race as well as for the schedule in general. So a quarter-mile short track is something that we will literally never see the rest of the year. It's something completely different, and the race and event that they're making on it is completely different as well. The stages are different, the different artists that are going to be there, out of the norm for what NASCAR usually does. So this is a huge way for NASCAR to really branch itself out to audiences that they never have ever had the chance of getting before with the way they run normal events. Now, will it work? I'm going to leave that up to you. So let me know down in the comments below what you think of the Los Angeles Clash. While you're at it, leave a like on this video, share this video, and subscribe to my channel for more great NASCAR content. Like the NASCAR Weekly Podcast, which will be on my channel February 2nd at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Going to be a blast. A lot of cool stuff to talk about. And also, thank you to all of my channel members for your continued support. Y'all are the absolute best. So until next time, have a good one.